People still feel that they're not being protected against the Taliban.
Yes, indeed. I think the dilemma in Afghanistan has always been a lack of security for Afghan people, because the Americans have started last summer their first operation in Helmand in Marja, and they have been continuing since that time, cleaning up other areas in Helmand and Kandahar. But we don't know how they will be able to hold it, because the surge will be over this upcoming summer, and the Afghan forces are not yet ready to take responsibility in providing security for the local population. And this is why the local population are afraid that Taliban might come back and take revenge on them.
It's going to make it very difficult for the US Secretary of Defense Robert Gates, as he arrives in Afghanistan, to talk about the gradual withdrawing of troops. It's going to be difficult to get that right, given the security situation in parts of the country.
Yes, indeed. It's not only the south, but in other areas in Afghanistan and in the east, also in the north. So it will be a very difficult process, and it will be a very difficult task for Afghan security forces, because in the presence of NATO forces, they are able to maneuver, all these battles. But without the support of NATO, they will not be able to take on the Taliban alone. So it is a big dilemma, but I don't think that the Afghan security forces will be able to take the whole responsibility by end of 2014.
So do you think there'll be some kind of security partnership between the US and Afghanistan beyond 2014? Will we still see the US intervening in the country?
Yes, no doubt about it. There are already discussions in Kabul about US permanent bases in Afghanistan. We all know that by 2014, the Afghan security forces will not be able to secure the country alone. And they will need the support, the military support from NATO forces, and specifically from the United States. And I think the Americans have already sent a signal to Kabul that they are willing to remain in Afghanistan beyond 2014, probably in small numbers in some specific bases, but the Afghan security forces will need the support of US forces in Afghanistan for a long term.
Good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for your analysis there. Haroon Mir in Kabul for us. Now, the trial of former French President Jacques Chirac begins on Monday. He's facing charges of corruption which date back to his time as mayor of Paris. Tim Friend has the details.
In typical style, Jacques Chirac always insisted that he wanted to be treated like any other person facing trial. But that's unlikely to happen. The 78-year-old, one of France's longest-serving presidents, seems to grow in popularity with the French public, who view him with a particular fondness, the envy of other politicians. This is despite the fact that he's the first former head of state to face criminal charges since the Fifth Republic was founded half a century ago.
He is a man who sort of does the right thing at critical times. We've seen it politically at other times, like saying that France should not be involved in Iraq. We've seen it at times where he stood up for the rights of Parliament. And we saw it, of course, that he was very unequivocally against the Front National. And, that he stands as a statesman for that, I think, whatever his other faults.
He's now in fragile health. His wife, Bernadette, dismissed reports that he's suffering from Alzheimer's disease, but he may find a court appearance arduous. The abuse of public funds charges spring from his time as mayor of Paris and salaries paid to so-called phantom employees at the town hall. The money was used as part of Chirac's drive for further power in the 1990s, at the end of his 18-year term as mayor.
Well, he finished his term as mayor of Paris in 1995, and after that he won 2 presidential elections in 1995 and in 2002. Now, the French public was very much aware of these very serious allegations against him of corruption, but it's a cultural problem in France. I think the French press is not strong enough. It didn't do a good job of holding him accountable.
A civil action is being settled by repayment of funds. Mr. Chirac lost his legal immunity against criminal charges after he retired. If found guilty, he could face a heavy fine and up to 10 years in prison. But in practice, he would be more likely to receive a small suspended sentence. Tim Friend, Al Jazeera, Paris.
There's been a violent eruption at the Kilauea volcano in Hawaii. Lava was spewed up to 20 meters in the air. Also 150 small earthquakes in the area. The volcano has been erupting since 1983, making it one of the most active in the world. Finally, after nearly 3 decades of space travel, the shuttle Discovery has set off on its final journey. Astronauts have sealed its hatches and undocked from the International Space Station. Discovery is flying a victory lap around the orbiting lab before heading back to Earth.
Now, once again, undocking
It's scheduled to make its final touchdown on Wednesday.
The two spacecraft were over the western Pacific
More on that
Ocean,
story
just to the north of Australia.
and all the others rest of the day's news on our website.
Discovery
next,
continuing to back
Listening
away
Post.
once the shuttle.
Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at the Listening Post. This week, one story in Pakistan reported 2 different ways.
Was he a CIA contractor? Was he a diplomat?
The CIA agent and the media.
The protesters continue to chant.
Nigerian journalism gets a shakeup all the way from New York. China clamping down on the news media to keep the Jasmine Revolution from spreading to the Far East. And taking stock of the footage they call B-roll in our web video of the week.
Do you need shots of ordinary people doing things for your next commercial? We got that B-roll. We got that B-roll.
A pretty big news story has been unfolding in Pakistan over the past few weeks. Don't feel bad if you've missed it. Much of the news media did too. Some of the outlets that did report the story got it wrong and may have done so deliberately. On January 27th, an American named Raymond Davis allegedly shot and killed 2 Pakistani men in Lahore who he claimed were trying to rob him. The Pakistani media first speculated and then reported that Davis was with the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency. He was a CIA spy. The U.S. Embassy said that Davis was a mere technical advisor, and the State Department in Washington urged the U.S. media to go with that version of the story, which they did, until a British newspaper, The Guardian, reported that Davis was in fact CIA. Our starting point this week is Lahore, Pakistan. The case of the unquiet American, the disquieting effect that this incident has had on U.S.-Pakistani relations, and the noise that now surrounds the coverage and non-coverage of the story.
Pakistan. Tonight, an American man is in prison there accused of murder.
When the story first broke, it was a broad daylight affair.
It's just had blanket coverage in the Pakistani media. For the past month, the headlines have been entirely dominated by the Davis issue.
Investigations are underway and more facts about the shooting incident are being uncovered.
The situation always seemed a bit murky.
What had been painfully obvious that